Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to the Explainer, everyone. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating concept from Chapter 14 of Jon Antonucci's book on servant-minded leadership. The chapter is titled, I Don't Know What I Don't Know, and honestly, it completely flips a massive misconception we see all the time in the modern professional world. We're going to break down this mindful approach of recognizing our own limited knowledge so we can make better, more balanced decisions. And we're going to explore why truly serving others doesn't actually mean agreeing to every single request that comes across your desk.
All right, Section 1, the empathy trap.
So there's this overarching paradox we really need to look at today. And it starts with a tough question. Are you loving your team to death? I mean, think about it. We hear constantly that the absolute best leaders are the ones who always accommodate their people, right? But I want you to ask yourself if your exhausting efforts to always be the one saying yes might actually be backfiring. It's kind of a tough pill to swallow. We're taught to be servant leaders, to empower people, open doors, grant requests, basically to be the good guy. But what if that instinct to constantly accommodate is secretly sabotaging both your team's success and your own sanity?
Which leads us directly into a pretty dangerous paradox. A leader who gives literally everything but still fails. This is the perilous trap of the burned-out manager. You grant every request, you bend over backwards, thinking you're just embodying this perfect, empathetic servant leader. You give the extra time off. You approve budget increases without batting an eye. You say yes to every half-baked idea just because you want to be supportive. And then, what happens? You wake up one day and realize it simply isn't working. Productivity drops, the workplace culture actually suffers because there are zero clear boundaries, and you're left completely exhausted, holding the bag. It turns out just checking the empathy box isn't enough to run a healthy, successful team.
Moving on to Section 2, get a second source. To figure out how to break out of this vicious cycle of yes-man burnout, we need a complete paradigm shift. Let's borrow a foundational rule from the world of investigative journalism. Always get a second source. In the text, the author shares this brilliant anecdote about a roommate who was an investigative reporter for a local paper. And this reporter lived by a very simple mantra. If you get a tip, don't just take their word for it. In fact, he joked that even if your own mother tells you she loves you, you'd better go out and get a second source to confirm it. It's very tongue-in-cheek, obviously, but it hits the nail on the head. It emphasizes the immense value of asking questions, digging deeper, and not blindly believing the very first thing you hear, without corroborating the facts.
That brings us to Section 3, when no means love.
So how exactly does a strict journalistic rule apply to you and your daily management style? Well, it requires moving entirely away from short-sighted box checking. That's the old myth. That's blindly checking that empathy box, listening to an employee, taking their impassioned request, and just taking immediate action, just so you can be seen as nice and supportive. Instead, we have to shift toward long-term, mindful evaluation. This is the new reality of effective leadership. It means stopping to thoughtfully evaluate what is actually best for the individual and the organization as a whole over the span of months and years. A traditional servant leader might act based purely on how the employee standing right in front of them is feeling in that exact isolated moment. But this new, mindful approach, it demands taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and doing the hard work of gathering more context.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core concept we're talking about here, servant-minded leadership. Notice how the heart sits neatly inside the light bulb, held securely by two hands. It perfectly captures the balance we've been discussing. It's not just about having a warm servant's heart. It's about bringing the mind, the intellect, and the big picture awareness right into the equation. It's taking the time to be completely present in the emotional reality of the situation, while simultaneously keeping your mind switched on to evaluate the broader operational impact. You're bringing your head and your heart into complete alignment. Sometimes no is the most loving thing you can say. Let that sink in for a second. It's a heavy thought, isn't it? It goes against almost everything the modern yes-man leadership culture tries to teach us. The author actually mentions a business coach whose client gave their staff absolutely everything they asked for, yet that leader couldn't figure out why it still wasn't enough and why morale was still completely in the gutter. The hard truth we just have to face is that love does not mean enablement. Loving your team means wanting and actively doing what's actually best for them in the long run, not necessarily what's fiercely desired in the heat of the moment. Boundaries and limits create safety and stability. Honestly, a mindful no can protect a team much, much better than a reckless yes.
Now let's look at Section 4, the bigger picture. So, how does a servant-minded leader practically apply this balanced decision-making process in the real, incredibly messy world of management? Let's agitate the problem a bit. What happens if everyone gets a raise? As a leader, you naturally want to give everyone a raise. If someone asks and they've been working hard, your servant heart instantly says, yes, absolutely, I want to support you. But the mindful reality is this: if you grant every single raise request, the company inevitably goes bankrupt. Everyone wants a raise, sure, but what they want even more than a bump in pay is consistent employment and a company that doesn't fold in 6 months. So you really have to balance what feels right and fair in the moment with what is authentically feasible and protective for the entire organization over time.
So the crucial point is adopting a unified, mindful mindset, and this really boils down to 3 key actions. First, obtain multiple perspectives. Just like our investigative reporter, don't believe everything the first person tells you or immediately act on it. Dig around a little, ask peers, see the issue from different angles. Second, balance individual needs with the whole. Think about the overall picture when approving things like extensive time off. The deep interests of the individual have to be mitigated by the operational interests of the whole team, making sure no one else is unfairly burdened. And third, and this is perhaps the most important one, assume there are missing details. Remind yourself constantly that you simply don't know what you don't know. The story you are hearing is rarely the complete story.
Finally, Section 5. Embrace the unknown.
To truly serve your team, you have to bring all of this together around the profound power of intellectual humility. As Frank Zappa once said, the mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it isn't open. I love that. It perfectly grounds this somewhat abstract concept of embracing our own ignorance. A truly servant-minded leader has this genuine, insatiable desire to understand. They recognize that even what is known right now isn't all there is to know. You have to actively open the parachute. You have to embrace the slightly uncomfortable fact that there are always more questions to be asked, more context to uncover, and a much wider perspective to be gained before you make a final call.
Which leads me to a final, pretty provocative question for you. What don't you know today? Just think about a major decision you are facing with your team right now. Are you just checking the empathy box blindly to relieve the immediate pressure, or are you stepping back, getting a second source, and evaluating the bigger picture? Remember, being an exceptional leader isn't about always saying yes. It's about mindfully seeking the absolute best outcome for everyone involved, even if that means bravely saying no. I really hope this explainer helped you recognize some blind spots and sparked your curiosity to dig a little deeper in your own daily leadership. Keep asking questions, keep opening that parachute, and keep learning.